Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, September 2nd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you. On this episode, we have a ton of baseball news you should know. We've got players landing on the IL. We've got guys coming back from the IL. We have Kodai Senga possibly losing his rotation spot. We have Ha-Seong Kim in Atlanta all of a sudden. What? I didn't even know he was on waivers, Apparently, he's with Atlanta now. We have some roster expansion, not as much as we used to get, but 2 players added to every roster on Monday. So bigger rosters, some interesting names in there, including a top prospect in Cincinnati, among a few others. And in place of where the money went, we're going to talk about how we would prioritize and choose between Jonah, Tong, and Payton Tolle in long-term leagues, because that's an interesting question to break down from a keeper and dynasty perspective. And we're at that point in the year where the money went is to fill immediate needs. It's at 2-start pitchers. That's a lot of the players we talk about on our Friday episodes. So we begin today with a very rested Eno and news that MacKenzie Gore has been placed on the IL with shoulder inflammation. He is optimistic about pitching again this season, so we'll see if that happens in the next couple of weeks. You might remember MacKenzie Gore had a 3.02 ERA and a 120 whip at the All-Star break. He's got a 7.54 ERA and a 1.76 whip in the time since. Most of that damage coming in his first 3 out of 4 starts coming out of the break. I wanted to ask you, were there any clear and obvious signs of decay in MacKenzie Gore's arsenal that lined up with the second half struggles?
I think so. I mean, his stuff was down, but this is something that is, interestingly enough, a problem for MacKenzie Gore over his entire career. He only has 500 pitches in September over his career, so I took it off of this list that shows that over the course of the season, his fastball velocity drops, his vertical break on his fastball drops, his arm angle drops, and his stuff plus drops from a 105 across all of his Marches and Aprils to a 96, a 95 across all his Julys. So, this is the kind of thing that has dogged him his entire career, that he starts out great. He's kind of a first half pitcher. If you look at his just overall results splits for his career, it's a 3.85, 3.87 ERA in the first half and a 4.95 in the second half. And usually I don't put much credence in those, but if you put that up against a drop in stuff plus, a drop in velocity, drop in arm angle, then I guess this is a thing that MacKenzie Gore needs to figure out. Maybe, at his age, with his, stature in the league, with how long he's been in the league, maybe this is just, he's getting better and he's putting up more innings usually year over year. Maybe next year will be the year that he has the stamina to finish the season. But this is something that has been true in all 4 of his seasons so far, that he starts out fast and he just loses gas over the course of the year.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. I think you'd expect that over time, that's something you'd kind of learn, you'd adapt to, you'd find different ways to prepare, different ways to train. So far, it hasn't happened. And this is really his 3rd full season at the big league level. All of those have come in Washington, previously with the Padres in 2022 is kind of a half season in the big leagues. But then it also points back to longer term questions we've had about the Nats and their pitching program and different things they're doing as an organization too. Whether they have a solution for him or not remains to be seen. But we'll see if we get Gore back at some point in the final couple of weeks. From a fantasy perspective, you may have been dropping him because of the struggles, and the injury was enough to push you even further if you hadn't already done that. You could just pick him back up if he is back in a couple of weeks, because there's nothing guaranteed. There's nothing for them to play for. If he doesn't feel good, no reason to bring him back in September. 147 in the 3rd innings already on the ledger after 166 in a 3rd a year ago from MacKenzie Gore. Staying in division, this one caught me by surprise. Edward Cabrera lands on the IL with a right elbow sprain, and this is a huge bummer. I mean, further details probably following extra examinations in the near future, if those haven't even happened already. What is going on with Edward Cabrera? Like, you were right about the skills. You were right that he could put the pieces together and improve the control and do all of the things that you kind of hoped he could do over the course of his career. It was always more of a, yeah, the stuff's electric, but he doesn't have the command to pull it off. This year, he's had that. He's got a 105 location plus. It's been a more balanced arsenal, and it's been the best results we've seen over this sort of volume of innings from Cabrera as a big leaguer.
Yeah, I'm currently looking at an incredibly helpful, but also not helpful list of injuries from Fox Sports. It's pretty hilarious. It just has a body part listed. So like finger, knee, shoulder, blister. It's like there's no additional information. But I can tell you that in 2024 he had shoulder issues twice, and that this is not the first time the elbow has cropped up. Again, without any context, it's, I guess I'm leaning towards not very useful, but it does tell you a little bit about, he's a hard thrower. I think he was day to day early in the season with some elbow stuff. And then, so he had a July 11th start where he had posterior right elbow discomfort. Now that's almost unhelpful in the other direction. That's a lot of information, but I don't know what it means. So anyway, I would just say guys break. I was hopeful that the different arm slot this year would also be a healthier one for him. Do we count it as a victory that he made it to 128 innings, the most he'd done in the major leagues, and one of his most prolific seasons in all? I think in 2023 he had 127 innings, combined. So this is really kind of a high watermark for him. And yet he ends the season with a sprain, and the sprain is a tear. So I'm really hoping we don't hear about Tommy John. That could be the next thing for Edward Cabrera. We don't have the full diagnosis in place yet. If it is not one that needs Tommy John, I will still be somewhat cautious with him next year. I can't imagine he has anything better than a C health grade.
Yeah, I think last year it was a right shoulder impingement that bothered him. You go back further, as a prospect, he dealt with arm trouble. He had stuff at the alternate site with his arm. I mean, just all different points of his career have been held up by arm injuries.
It's nasty stuff, I don't know.
And we're at the point in the calendar now where if someone goes down with a torn UCL and needs Tommy John surgery, you can pretty much write off the possibility of a 2026 return. You're going to be looking at 2027 and hoping that next offseason is just a healthy buildup rather than extended rehab. But that's the direction things are going right now with Edward Cabrera. That's a Marlins rotation that is really banged up. Even some of the guys that are getting late opportunities for them, Jansen Junk, Ryan Gusto have hit the IL recently. Ryan Weathers has been plagued by injuries this year. Max Meyer's been down for a long time. The good news, I guess, for the Marlins, if there is any, they did promote Thomas White, their top pitching prospect, to AAA. Robbie Snelling's been having a nice year, so there are some reinforcements on the horizon, probably for 2026.
But if you look at their problems list, is Valente Belloso is on there. Adam Mazur's on there. I want Robbie Snelling on there. I'm sorry. He's better than those guys.
Well, maybe we'll see him down the stretch. But now that rosters have expanded, if you do see someone in September, it's probably going to be brief. You got to consider their workloads too, especially for prospects. Where are they going to hit that shutdown point? So I think the bulk of the impact guys we're going to see have received that call already. Related follow-up, we knew Randy Rodriguez had a tear in his UCL. The follow-ups on that were recommendations for Tommy John surgery, so he'll likely have that in the near future. But the new reliever injury from the weekend, Jason Adam went down with a ruptured left quadriceps tendon. That is, I think, a pretty unusual injury for pitchers. We've seen ruptured Achilles sometimes, and it was one of those things where Adam's delivery carries him toward the first base side, ball was hit to the third base side, tried to get a quick kind of plant and go the opposite direction, and the quad just went. So his season appears to be over, and I think could be the kind of injury that actually lingers on into the beginning of 2026 too, depending on how he recovers.
Yeah, I mean, this is surgery, right? I think, what we're talking about with Isaac Paredes, I don't know if we ever got a full diagnosis from Isaac Paredes, but they were just like, it's bad.
It's bad.
That's
what they said.
I just think that's maybe like a ruptured hamstring tendon or like you know what I mean? So that's at least somewhat similar, like where it's I think this is a 4-month plus, situation here for Jason Adam, which sucks. And then it's, even longer for Randy Rodriguez. The nice thing, I guess, for the Padres fans is that they had such a great bullpen that, when I was comparing great bullpens, I left David Morgan and Wandy Peralta off the list because, they had an embarrassment of riches. So if there is a bullpen that could handle something like that, it probably is the Padres bullpen. On the other hand, Jason Adam was one of the funkiest release points and had the funkiest kind of arsenal. Everyone else is a little bit more high velo, over the top, and he was kind of a sideways guy. So that will hurt them on some level. And then I feel badly for Giants fans and for Randy Rodriguez. This is, it's the UCL tear. It's the Tommy John. He's going to miss all of next year, I'm sure. Maybe he comes back at the very end if they make the playoffs or something. But it's not good news for him. And it also is rough because if you're Buster Posey and you're the Giants, you're hoping, okay, like it wasn't the greatest year, but we were like a 500-ish team and we're not losing many players. So let's go out and get what we need to get. Well, now you need to get a closer. I don't think they have one on staff. Walker, to me, is a decent setup guy. Even Peguero, the guy who throws 100, is more of a setup guy for me because he's a sinker guy. He doesn't get the whiffs. So they got 2 sinker guys. They need to go get a 4-seam. If they wouldn't get Ryan Helsley, okay, that makes sense. Except Ryan Helsley is going to cost you, $10, $15 million a year at least. And, so then your search for an impact bat gets affected. How much money do we have? Because we had to get a closer, or maybe you have to be real cheap on the starting pitching market. So, this is bad news for everybody. And it's just the Padres might be able to suffer this one and get through it and be all right.
Yeah, the way they're built, they can handle an injury like this better than some of the other clubs out there that have been dealing with reliever injuries in recent weeks. We did see some returns from injury. Jackson Chourio came back this weekend, came back on Saturday, hit a huge, basically the game-winning home run in that second game of the series against the Blue Jays, had 4 hits on Sunday. Had a little bit of a scare, actually, running the bases on Monday against the Phillies. We'll see if anything lingers on. They have actually a planned day off Tuesday. Very odd to have that. And then they're back in that series against the Phillies on Wednesday. So just keep an eye on the day-to-day notes just in case Chourio ends up getting a breather. But seemed like he stayed in the game. So hamstring seems to be feeling okay for Chourio based on how well he's swinging it right off the IL. I wanted to ask you about Chris Sale. His return from the IL came this weekend as well. It seemed like kind of typical Chris Sale right out of the box. I mean, 6 innings, 1 run ball, 9 Ks, 1 walk against the Phillies. Only needed 78 pitches to get those 18 outs, too.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily his best velo of the year. Not his worst, but not his best either. But it was kind of in line with where he was before he got hurt. His vertical movement on his fastball has actually been getting better over the course of the season. He had the most ride that he'd had this year on his 4-seam. Chris Sale did. So, nothing really concerning about what pitches he used, what velos he used, what stuff he had, what kind of command he had. So I think he just jumps back in there and they pitch him as long as they're competitive. I don't know. He, with somebody like Chris Sale, like there's potential Hall of Fame ramifications. So I could see him pitching just to pitch. You know what I mean? Like, even if the Braves are out or whatever, like I could see him being like, hey, listen, 3 more starts, those many Ks gets me closer to 3,000. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer now, I think.
Yeah, he's 400.
But he could make his case better.
463 Ks away from 3,000. I don't know if he has to hit that milestone to get there. I think when we reach the point where Sale is on the ballot, I think current voters have lower expectations for volume. The modern game has done that accordingly, and I think the quality of the innings has been there for Sale. I think, yeah, he's probably in even at this point in his career. But if you assume reasonable health for another couple of seasons, then you're going to have a guy flirting with that 3,000 K milestone, and I think that will help seal it for folks that might be on the fence about it right now. A lot of news to catch up on from the long weekend. This is really surprising. Kodai Senga could lose his rotation spot. I was reading the notebook from Tim Britton of The Athletic. And if you told me even a month ago, the Mets are going to be trying to figure out who's in their playoff rotation, and Senga is among the guys that might not be in it, I would have been very surprised. Now, maybe there's a little reset and he's able to take the ball later in the month for a few turns and get back on track. But what's going wrong for Kodai Senga? What has actually put him in this position?
First of all, just like a shout out to Jason Martinez at Roster Resource and whoever it is that mans the RotoWire probables list. They are doing the hard work, especially right now, I think, because you're talking about expanded rosters with openers, and you have to really monitor everything people say, what they write. And so we did have a great piece from Tim Britton about, hey, Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong came up and have great stuff, and you seem like you want them in the rotation. But if you'd asked, in terms of, background, in terms of stature in the game, in terms of what you would have asked like a month ago, like you said, like you would have had Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, and David Peterson in that rotation. David Peterson's had his own struggles recently. Sean Manaea, to me, looks really good for 3 or 4 innings at a time, and he's kind of like a one-pitch guy almost, with the fastball being so much better than anything else he throws, that it actually becomes easy for me in a playoff situation to make Sean Manaea a situational guy, right? But what do you do with him down the stretch? You want to keep him stretched out. So I think this is definitely a team that seems set up for a 6-man rotation, especially with Clay Holmes' innings running out or whatever, So you can keep 6 guys in there, but even with 6 guys, is there somebody that's out? You did Peterson, Senga, Manaea, McLean, Holmes, Tong, and Tyler McGill comes back.
That's the wild card. I think McGill has shown us enough this season to replace somebody. The question is who and how.
But I mean, so much depends on what his velo looks like. He's so much better when he's high, 96 basically, than when he's 94. I mean, just honestly, there's a bit of a shelf there for McGill, where he's going to be a lot better if he can come in with that good velo. And sometimes he loses that velo and starts. So for me in the playoffs, McGill and Manaea are awesome situational guys. But the problem is then you're putting Tong or McLean on the mound as a starter in the playoffs, and you're asking a lot of them demeanor-wise. And maybe why don't you just start the game then with McGill and Manaea, who have a little bit more experience, but then you bring in Tong and McLean really quickly, like in the 3rd or 4th. So anyway, once they get to the playoffs, I actually think that they are much better situated than in trying to figure it out during the regular season situation. You know what I mean? Like, I think they could do pitching. Couldn't they do pitching chaos better than the Tigers did last year with this group of arms? Like, they're very exciting arms. It's just when you're asking them to go 6 and help the bullpen out and make it to the postseason and make it through a regular season schedule, then it gets a little difficult. I get why people are saying this about Senga, but I think that maybe you could take someone like Manaea out too, honestly, and start making him situational now, where you're using him at 3 innings at a time now. And I'm not saying this because I don't think Sean Manaea is good. I just think that some of September for the Mets is going to be preparing for what you do with the playoff rotation. And I think with Kodai Senga, I don't see how you can use him situationally as much as I can see you starting a game with him, and if the command isn't there, you move on. Because command to me is one of the big reasons Kodai Senga's been a struggle bunny. I was looking, for the year, has the 12th worst location plus. That location plus has gotten worse in the second half. There's the list of people in the second half who have a worse location plus and started and through 30 innings has 7 people on. Davis Martin, Jack Leiter, Walker Buehler, who lost his job, MacKenzie Gore, we just talked about. Carlos Rodon has never had good command, but at least he has the great stuff. Seth Lugo, who's struggling through a year, and then Ryan Pepio, who has struggled with command in the past. So, and he's right there with Charlie Morton, whose command is way off. So, that's the ticket for me for Kodai Senga. His velo is there. The ghost fork is there, but if he can't command the fastball and the cutter, then he can't get into counts where he can throw the ghost fork. And the ghost fork is not a pitch you throw, for strikes very often. So I think you leave Kodai Senga in as a starting pitcher because that's the only way you'd use him in the postseason. I can't imagine bringing Kodai Senga, like you're going to bring Kodai Senga out with runners on in the playoffs.
I don't think so. I think you see in the splits, you look at his first time through versus the second time through. Opposing hitters first time through hitting 220, 303, 393. I mean, it's a really respectable, good slash line against. Second time through 249, 332, 457. So maybe you do the pitching chaos thing. You say, okay, he's going to give us 4. He's going to give us 4 and change.
And you could prepare for that for the playoffs by, hey, hey, Sean, you've done this in the past. You're coming back from injury, or to Tyler McGill, hey, what if you just piggyback with Kodai and you come in third or fourth and you give us 3 or 4 wins? You might get the win, dude.
Yeah.
That arbitration. You want that in arbitration. You want that win.
Interesting thing here, Senga has a player option for 2026 at $15 million. Does he definitely pick that up? Or does he go test the waters and try to get a multi-year deal, even though the second half has been pretty bumpy?
I think he probably talks to the Mets.
Just say, hey, let's guarantee,
if you're Kodai, you want to
guarantee some of this.
Yeah. You want to stay in New York. And you're like, hey, I can pick up this 15. What if we made it 3 and 40? I'll take a little bit, but I'd get more years,
What do you think his home road splits look like? How much do you think the park has helped him so far?
Oh, see, there was an assumption baked in there that it's good. So now I have to play that whole game. Is he asking me because it's bad and it's worse? My instinct would be to say he has a 3-2 at home and a 4-5 on the road.
He's got a 2-8 at home and a 3-2 on the road.
Oh, because his overall numbers are still good.
His overall numbers are still good. This year, it's still not. It's not that much of a.
See, I think if you're him, you want to stay in New York. You like New York. You like the place. You like that park. Yeah, I think if they don't give him an extension, he just picks it up. I do actually, and that is true. And I'm not looking at the run right now. This might be a bad segue, but that is true of Ha-Seong Kim.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation. So he was claimed off waivers by Atlanta. Kim has a player option at $16 million for 2026. He's been hurt for most of this season. It's just been kind of a lost year due to injury, trying to come back from shoulder surgery. And you look at the needs that Atlanta has organizationally. I don't think they'd be sad if he picked up that option, because if they would be sad about it, they wouldn't have claimed him off waivers given their situation in the standings, right?
The assumption is he will.
Yeah.
I think the assumption is he will. That's why Tampa puts him on there. Is that would be the most we'd paid a player in a long time. Mm-hmm. And we just called up Carson Williams. So that's why they put him out there. They were hoping somebody would just take the contract out their hands. If you're Ha-Seong Kim, you wanted to prove you were healthy this year and you didn't. So you can't prove, I think, in 1 month that you're fully healthy and you should get a 3-year deal. So, and then if you're the Braves, I think it's been kind of wild. One of the wilder things for me about the Braves run is just how they've been content to go year to year at shortstop. They let Dansby Swanson go, and then it was Orlando Arcia, who was actually pretty decent. But then Nick Allen has the worst WRC plus in baseball by 20 points among qualified hitters. Do you know who second worst is? Is that on the rundown? Did you put that on the rundown?
Second worst qualified hitters in WRC plus.
Who's he 20 points worse than?
Joey Ortiz.
Oh, that's a good guess. It's Brian Hayes. Maybe Joey Ortiz didn't qualify. I want to actually look that up now.
Ortiz has played better since, I want to say it's late May is when it kind of turned. But he was hanging around down there for a while as one of the lightest hitting regulars because the start was so bad that he got off to. But if you need a shortstop this winter, I have bad news. There really aren't any that are going to be available. Trevor Story has an opt-out that he probably won't exercise, right? Because he's still got a lot of guaranteed money if he stays in Boston. We don't think Bo Bichette is a shortstop long-term.
You could sign him to be a 2-year shortstop, but then you have to sign him. I think he's going to get 5 or 6 years.
Right. I don't think that's where Atlanta would go.
And Atlanta hasn't worked that way in the past either. They haven't really. I think their biggest free agent acquisition is the $60 million they gave. Is it Ozuna?
For open market position players, that sounds close to their ceiling.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing a lot of extensions with guys that were under club control. That's been the recipe. I mean, the Riley money is big money. The Olsen money was pretty big money. But those were extensions, not free agent additions, right?
Yeah. Marcell Ozuna, $65 million on the open market. That was it.
It just depends on how you count it, though. I don't know.
They've given big money to some people that just happen to be people they already had under team control.
Right. But yeah, shortstops that are free agents: Orlando Arcia, Chris Taylor, Ahmed Rosario, Miguel Rojas, Willie Castro, Isaiah Kiner, Falefa, Luis Rengifo, if he's even really a shortstop, and then Bo Bichette.
No. And half of those guys weren't even really shortstops. Yeah.
So there you go. So I think that's
you really want to put IKF in as your starting shortstop? I don't think so.
No, I think you want to take a chance on a 1-year deal with Kim with the bounce back. And if he opts out and tries to get a multi-year deal somewhere else, great, fine. You're not that worried about it.
You've kind of been a Nacho Alvarez stan.
I like him as a hitter. I've been informed by people that know more about their system that he's definitely not a shortstop anymore, even though he was
interesting.
For a little while.
Fangraphs had a 55 present, 60 future field. They have him listed at 5'10", 190, so it doesn't seem like a body problem. I don't know. I guess if Ha-Seong Kim goes, my guess is actually they just try Nacho Alvarez.
Yeah, they just haven't been playing him there. Looking at the Fangraphs report, though, real quick.
Which is weird. If you have Nick Allen on your team and you have Nacho Alvarez on your team and you're not trying Nacho Alvarez as short, that does say something.
Probably tells you, right? Largely shifted to third base due to his lack of range. Foot speed still a bit of an issue at third, especially when he's to charge slow rollers. Otherwise, smooth and graceful defender. Right, so he can play a position defensively. He just can't play shortstop at a big league level. I think that's the Nacho Alvarez
to me, the
now.
biggest problem is he has no power.
I think he has some power. By the way, I think since I declared that I don't believe Bryce Turang will ever hit for in-game power, he's
just been gone on a tear.
He has had a massive tear. It's kind of started back around the time Vinny Rottino jumped on to talk Brewers with me, and I think it was Jack Stern from Brewer Fanatic that had the breakdown of it, explaining hey, when you're a BP, Bryce Turang hits some big time homers in BP. There is power in there, and he's been tapping into it. He's got 17 this season. He's got more than he's got in the last 2 seasons combined.
It's way more than I thought. Also, just way fewer stolen bases than I think I wanted when I picked him up in a couple of leagues. But I'll take the homers.
Yeah, you lost 28 bags, but you got 10 homers, and you got a lot more average. Sitting 289 this year too, so nice boost.
This is why I like power, by the way. Power has descending was a cascading opportunities for you. It increases your batting average, it increases your runs, it increases your RBI, it increases everything.
Yeah. I mean, it touches 4 categories all right there. It's great. Nacho Alvarez, though, man, I think there's a little more power there in the same kind of way. It might just take him a little while to really get to it, but
that's funny because he is similar max EV and hard hit rates to Turang last year.
And he's got a great idea of the zone, which I feel like Turang's generally had a good idea of the zone throughout his time as a prospect and at the beginning of his career. So I think it's a longer path to some power than you might like, but in deep leagues, I think that actually plays. All that is to say, I would not be surprised if Ha-Seong Kim with health is actually good picking up his player option and actually solves a problem for Atlanta in 2026 that they will then have to solve again in 2027 based on the way.
I do wonder what his true talent. I still don't have a full handle on what Ha-Seong Kim's true talent power is, especially in Atlanta. In Atlanta, that's the launching pad. At least it's launching pad junior. It used to be the launching pad when it's downtown, but it still has more altitude than you might expect. I think it might be the second or third highest up park in baseball right now.
That is surprising. That is. My topography needs work, but I
It's just
Would
like
not have assumed
randomly
that.
sort of like, there's a little bit of mountains there. It's not near the coast, It's like inland. So, and it's not inland in a way like where like I think Kansas City is right at 0 or whatever, but yeah, it's just randomly has a little bit of height to it, and that we've just like also generally known that the Atlanta park does, it's not a pitcher friendly park, so this would be maybe one of the better park situations for him, but the bat speed is mediocre, the barrel rate is just around average, but hey, could he have like an average ISO? He's never really done that. If he had an average ISO next year, you could project him to hit, 240, 250 with 18 homers. And I don't know what his situation stealing wise at this point, but let's give him 15 stolen bases. Like, that's relevant in all leagues.
He stole 38 in 2023, so 22 for 27 last year in 121 games. I think he could still get mid-20s, maybe even low 30s. Like I trust that part of his game more than I've ever trusted his power. And you should definitely listen to me about power, because I've got that completely locked down for sub 400 slug guys. I can definitely tell you when those guys are going to go off and hit for more of it. But to your point about how the park plays, the 3-year rolling park factor for Truist is neutral. It is 16th in overall park factor. It's one of 1, 2, 3. There's about 6 parks that are 100 overall. Slight boost to homers at a 103. Also boost Ks a little bit at 106.
Yeah.
Tied for third.
I don't know why Ha-Seong Kim's been striking out so much this year. That's a little weird. But I think I would just attribute it to the fact that he hasn't really had a long stretch of play. He was hurt, came back, and then he was basically in spring training, then he got hurt again. So,
yeah, how about that? You want to see something weird? Something weird happened on Monday. Trevor Story hit maybe the weirdest home run we have ever seen. MacKenzie Gore tracking into right field at Fenway, trying to make a catch, has a ball go off of his glove, and it looks like it just lands in foul territory and hits a fan, and Trevor Story doesn't know what's going on. He's standing on second base.
Though, looking at that reaction, I think Noel was nervous.
He knew something was wrong at the time.
Because look at this. He if this is just a foul ball, he doesn't slump his shoulders like he does after it.
Right.
So he had that thing
just off the edge of his glove, and it ticks the pesky pole, and then it hits a fan's elbow. It's still
did he have a case for
glove.
obstruction?
No, I don't think so. That fan reaches out and then pulls his arm back, and it hits the pole before it hits anything else.
Is out of play, so you can't say the fan got into play.
And if you drew an imaginary line vertically on that fan or on that wall, the fan is actually doing a good job of not getting involved. So after the lengthy review, initially it was called a foul ball. It's called a homer. Everyone goes nuts. It made me wonder, what are some of the weirdest home runs that you remember? Like the one that stands out in everybody's mind if you grew up in the 90s is Jose Canseco off the top of his head. Like that's just flat out weird. But we've seen other ones where guys have tried to rob him. It hits the glove and goes over. And, that's the unusual but thing we see. The Story one off the glove into the foul pole is really pretty bizarre. But Fenway's built for weird homers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have the Xander Bogaerts one. This is the highest angle homer hit in the StatCast era. It's a 50-degree homer that it's amazing because it comes down and doinks on the yellow line at the top of the green monster. They had to review it because everyone's like, that's just a pop-up, and then they were like, oh, that's a monster double, right? Like that's just going to be off the wall and be a double. And then it just it was just long enough. It lands right on top of the green monster. But that's only weird because of angle. And we have another one that's weird because of angle. This one is just a screamer. Giancarlo Stanton. This is the lowest home run of the StatCast era.
It's just...
And look at the bounce.
It got more elevation after it hit in the stands than it did off the bat, which is
it's a screamer. You're like, that's a double. And then it's like, wait, it's still going 119 miles an hour, 14 degrees off the ground, hits the hits the stairs and goes higher than it ever did as the homer on the ricochet, because that was 119 miles an hour and kids are running away from it. If you look at the clip, they're like, there are people who are like, I don't want to touch that ball. That looked like it might take my hands off. So those are weird from like StatCast reasons, but they don't quite capture the weirdness of the replay. I mean, there was a replay in the Xander Bogaerts situation, but you found the one that I think of as like the weirdest homer of all time.
Yeah, Rick Sanchez sent us one. We'll have to process video for this one. Michael Morse hit a home run in St. Louis when he was with the Nationals, and it went under the right field wall, and there's a advertised sign just over the wall. It hit that space, and on the initial call, they just thought it was an in-play ball off the wall. So he gets thrown out going back to first base because no one on the field knew what was happening.
So he's like in a trot, Yeah. And then there's like, oh my God, they didn't call it a homer. So he tries to get back to first and he gets thrown out. And then he's really mad.
Yeah. And he's just standing out there for review. They review it and decide, oh no, it definitely was a home run. You could tell right away. Hit the advertisement just past the wall. So they come out, they signal home run. And Michael Morse, it's a grand slam in the first inning.
Good teams, yeah.
Yeah, huge on the road, like huge moment. They send him back around the bases. He touches each base, jogging back around the bases, stands in the box, pretends to swing the bat again, and then runs the bases for the home run, and they clear the bases for the grand slam. And at that point, the Busch Stadium crowd lays into him with boos, which was bizarre to the max. Maybe the weirdest one. Maybe one of the only ones with the review that actually kind of holds up to what we saw Trevor Story do on Monday. But
that was, I mean, it's the fake swing he makes is just so hilarious.
Yeah. The fake swing is just what puts it over the top, because you're like,
so
why?
I had so many laughs with Mike Morse. He ended up in San Francisco, and he was born in Jamaica like me, and he, like we had some rapport, and so we laughed about this one a lot.
Yeah, so there were some other oddities of the weekend. I mean, Taylor Ward had a collision with the left field wall in Houston. Fortunately, doesn't appear to have suffered a concussion. Needed 20 stitches above his eyes, or above his right eye, and immediately was signaling for help. He had to be carted off the field. But we've seen other players run into that wall before, and it's the Crawford boxes are odd. Like, parks that have character, I think, are generally good. My only complaint, and they have nice padding at the corner where the wall juts out, Ward ran into the spot for the out-of-town scoreboard, which is right next to that corner pad. And it's the things like that on the playing field that I think you have to really think through them before you say, yeah, let's go ahead and let that happen. We've seen players run into different parts of the fence that are like metal and they get cut up from it. But
Aaron Judge's toe
with that concrete slab at Dodger Stadium. And some of them are kind of like, oh, you only realize it's a problem when something bad happens. I think they should
have like QA testers who go out there and like act like, I don't want to say idiots, but like do dumb things,
like
just
crash
because
dummies.
I'm
like
not saying
doubles.
that Taylor Ward is dumb. I'm not saying that Aaron George is dumb. I'm just saying that like they should be crash test dummies. They should go out there and try to hurt themselves. They should like send out like, bullpen catchers or something, or somebody that like has some experience playing baseball, but like make them be like, act as weird as possible. Find all the places you get hurt. Jump against this wall. Does this hurt? Like kind of just like try to find these, because once the thing happens, you're like, well, duh. Like, look where he face planted. That looks like an awful place to face plant. Why isn't there anything covering that, or like bigger padding? And then once Judge's toe thing, they were all like, yeah, you know what? We probably should do something about that. And they did something about it. But it's like, we could do this before the big injury.
Yeah. And it's not the first time people have crashed into that wall. I think Joe Adele's actually run into that wall before too. So whether it's the dream team of crash test dummies that Eno is describing, some of these problems are avoidable, right? Players get hurt enough ways. We should try and reduce any surface adjacent to what they're playing on that can maximize damage like that. And I think that's what the covering on that out-of-town scoreboard can do.
We don't do classifieds anymore, but just imagine the classified for this one. Please come and be our crash test dummy. Have you played baseball? Do you have experience at D3 or higher? would you like to come in and try to hurt yourself against the wall?
I feel like you could actually just find some players that have, I don't know, like been hurt a couple of times that would then be better at just walking. Like you don't have to even like run into it. You could just look at it and say, here's how I think you get hurt
Or
here.
ask
and they
your
can
own
explain
outfitters, is there any part of the wall out there that you are nervous about, like that we can cover up, or do something about?
I think that the other side of it is like you do, like in Boston, the low fence, like robbable home runs. That's pretty exciting. The only concern on a wall as low as the wall is in right field in Boston is that you can go flying over it and then you're landing on your head.
I mean,
that's not great.
Isn't that the Torrey Hunter? Was that Torrey Hunter that caught the ball and flew over the back? Or no, it couldn't have been.
I mean, we've had the Robles net. We've had so many random bad injuries around the boundaries of the field where it's just like, man, there's got to be a little more we can do in some of these instances. There's going to be some stuff you can't avoid, but I would put the situation at the Daikon Park now, the Crawford box out of town scoreboard.
Avoidable.
That is an avoidable hazard. And this is the park that used to have Tal's Hill in center field, which I would have described as a clearly avoidable hazard.
Yeah, they got out in front of that one before someone tore their ACL on that.
Yeah, before someone dove and busted up their shoulder or tore up their knee. Yeah, like there were so many things that could have gone wrong there. So yeah, some weird happenings over the course of the long
It is
weekend.
weird though, because I do like unique parks. But
yeah.
I think you can have unique sized parks. You can have unique dimensions without having dimensions that might hurt people. And I also think that parks gain a lot of their dimension, a lot of their uniqueness from what they do for the fans and like what the concourse looks like and how it fits into the place around it, how it fits into the city around it. Like, how does it have a river along it? You know what I mean? The stuff like that. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to have a hill in center field to be unique.
Right. And I'm glad they fixed that before it turned into a major problem. But as far as just that out-of-town scoreboard goes, what if you just had a pad that ran up, 15 feet up on the wall, halfway up the wall, at a height where you could run and jump into it and still hit a pad, and then the out-of-town scoreboard begins? That could work, So just get a little more player input on those designs so we can avoid situations like the one Taylor Ward found himself in this weekend. There was one injury question that came in through Discord. Nick Kurtz is day-to-day with an oblique strain right now, and the question was basically that for a guy that has top-end bat speed, are we as concerned about that as we are about guys that throw, that pitch and sit close to their max, right? Is this the one downside in Nick Kurtz's profiles, that he has so much bat speed that he may be a little more susceptible to injuries like this?
We haven't done the full research yet. We did the little segment on it. I do think that it's something you have to think about. But I don't. The guys that throw the hardest and swing the hardest are the biggest stars in the game. So what do you want to do about that? Do you want to not draft them? If I was this person that had a chance to keep these guys, I would keep them. I'd keep Nick Kurtz. I think he's got a really, really impressive bat. So.
Yeah, it's the same problem we talked about on the pitching side, where you list off all the guys that sit close to their max and guys that might be more likely to break. And you say, well, if I don't draft any of them, who am I drafting? Who's my pitching staff made up of? I think it's just part of the game. You just have to accept it as part of the risk. And maybe you don't project him for 650 plate appearances. You project him for 600, but the quality of those plate appearances look like they're going to be as good as any young power hitter. I mean, that's the type of ceiling Nick Kurtz has shown us so far. So day-to-day for now, and not necessarily a situation to avoid when you see guys at the top of that bat speed leaderboard. At least we're so early in having that information. And if we get 5 or 10 years down the road and that group is constantly hurt as we have that leaderboard year over year over year, maybe we can reevaluate it then. But I think if you're proactively
staring at you in the face with the 120 mile an hour lasers.
But that's just like, yeah. And then the whole Stanton's entire body he's so jacked, but like he seems so tight. It just seems like every rubber band is as tight as it can possibly be for Giancarlo Stanton. And that's part of how he generates so much power, but it's also part of why he has so many soft tissue problems as well. I don't look at Nick Kurtz and Giancarlo Stanton and get the same
these guys
immediate response.
Have the same problems.
Yeah. Giancarlo Stanton, I think, lands in the too jacked bucket, if such a thing could exist.
The Ron Gant bucket.
Yes, the dreaded Ron Gant bucket of players where you're like, I think it's too much. I think you got to find a way to soften, slow down, have some more butter, do some things that make you a little more soggy because you're working too hard.
There is the Rustin Dodd piece about Patrick Mahomes' dad bod, and in it, a bunch of people out of pitching and baseball are quoted because there's a theory that you want your pitchers actually to have dad bods because I don't know.
I don't know if I don't know if I want to go all the way down that road either. I think there's just a certain point where you possibly could have worked out too much, and now you have left yourself more susceptible to breaking. That's where I think Giancarlo Stanton has resided.
You need more cushion for the pushing.
Yeah, that's, as you so eloquently put it. I've seen that painted on a wood block somewhere. Let's talk about roster expansion, since we're on expansion in general. 2 additions per team are the new rules.
Yes. A+ segue.
Yes. 14 pitchers are the max. Can't let that one
go by.
You can't double up on pitchers as rosters expand to 28. Rosters used to expand to 40. We'll talk more about why that might have been better on our Wednesday episode. There were some really interesting names that got promoted. Among them, Sal Stewart, I thought was maybe one of the most interesting players. I was picking him up a few weeks ago in Auto New. I thought he was a pretty interesting dart for this time of year because I thought the Reds could use one more bat. Stewart has shown that he controls the strike zone well, makes a lot of hard contact, and actually runs better than expected, or at least steals more bases than you'd expect. He's 17 for 20 this year in the minors. More of that coming at AA than at AAA, but still efficient on the base pass nonetheless. So I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are on Sal Stewart, who's getting some run at first base as he breaks in with the Reds.
Yeah, he actually gives me Spencer Steer vibes in terms of like professional at-bats at the plate, but he also hits the ball harder and has more bat speed and has more power upside and might just be a more exciting player than Spencer Steer, who's already 27. Sal Stewart's 21 and he's doing these things. So I think at some point that's what's going to happen is Steer's going to give way to Sal Stewart, but I don't know. Is there any other thing that Steer can do? Because Steer played a lot of different positions. So, yes, Sal Stewart came up and played first base and Spencer Steer sat. That's what happened the first day. But Gavin Blux played left field, and their DH was Austin Hayes. Is there room for Spencer Steer in this equation, or are we watching Spencer Steer lose his job right now? Because I don't think Sal Stewart's going to play third with Cabrera Hayes, Platinum Glover over there.
Right. I think the whole point of trading for Cabrera Hayes was the belief that at the very least you are going to get a lot better defensively, and then maybe you can find something to tweak with the bat that gets him back on track after a few years of disappointment, I guess you'd say, in Pittsburgh. And with Steer, he hasn't played left field since June. Late June, I think, was the last time he started a game in left field. And health has been a factor for Spencer Steer as well. So, maybe it's a more crowded depth chart now, but I still think they're probably going to go ahead and push the playing time pretty aggressively for Sal Stewart because he's not going to accrue enough service time to lose Rookie of the Year eligibility for next year. Not going to accrue enough at bats for that to happen. And I think he makes them better right out of the jump. So,
I think
let him play.
I think Steer will go to the outfield. I think that's what will happen because, and it may be awkward in the short term where it's all hands on deck and we're trying to win right now. So that's a little bit of downward pressure on Sal Stewart's at bats, right? Like if he doesn't come out and blow the door off the hinges, then you're like, well, we know we're going to get from Spencer Steer. But in terms of long-term health, Austin Hayes has a $12 million mutual option. Mutual options never happen. And I don't even know why people put them in there. I guess it's a starting point for a conversation, that you could have next year. I would love to hear an agent tell me what is up with mutual options because I don't think I've ever seen one picked up. And I think there's just an easy way for you from a team building perspective to say, okay, Steer's in the outfield now. We did this with Marte, right? And so now our outfield is Marte and Steer on the corners. And, that actually works for us. And I think that's decent. Who am I missing as their center fielder? TJ Friedel.
Yeah.
And he's still in arbitration. So that, I think long-term Steer is an outfielder. Short-term, I just think it gets a little messy. I'm not actually sure how this plays out.
Yeah, it's possible that it gets messy, but I think they brought Stewart up to play him, is the way I'm looking at it right now.
So then you just think Steer stops playing?
I think they'll play him a little less. I look, he's got a sub 100 WRC plus, even going back to July. Kind of a similar profile to Sal Stewart with less hard contact. Controls the zone well. He's popped 8 homers, but just not offering a ton right now. 307 OBP since July 1st is fine, but I think you'd rather have that guy as your 4th outfielder, 5th infielder, extra guy off the bench. You want to see if Stewart can provide that extra little bump for this lineup because it could make a pretty big difference. I did see a good list from Zachary Rotman of Fanside. It actually had it highlighting all the call-ups. And it's a mix. It's some guys that came off the IL, like Michael Kopech is back, for example. Joey Ortiz came back. Jake Berger came back, right? So it wasn't all prospects up and down. Some teams brought up another catcher just to take some wear and tear off their catching tandem. That certainly makes a lot of sense as well.
In terms of actual prospects who may play, Carter Jensen, the catcher for the Royals.
Yep.
Nick York in Pittsburgh.
I think he should play. Yeah.
And we said Sal Stewart.
Will the Cardinals play?
Alcantara, as a Cub is really interesting, but Owen Casey wasn't playing, and that was sort of the corresponding move there. So I think Kevin Alcantara, they're like, long term. I guess that means that they like Owen Casey more long term, and so they were just okay with Kevin Alcantara getting 2 at bats, 2 whatever plate appearances every couple of days, and that's it.
That or I don't know, defensive considerations maybe as a factor. I don't know if they like Alcantara's glove a little more or a lot more. I think that could be part of the equation too. It's just sort of making your roster more balanced in whatever way you possibly can. I think that's sort of the goal. I would say Nick York should play a lot for the Pirates. They need to see what he can do against big league pitching. I saw Harry Ford on that list of call-ups. As a catcher, I don't think he's going to play a lot. He can catch, but
you want to give Cal Raleigh days off, I think. I mean, Cal Raleigh's been great, and he's still popping homers, but his lines are not as good in the second half.
Right. So are you bringing up Ford to then give Mitch Garver occasional days off? And I don't know how much play. I think it's a part-time
more DH time
for
for Cal Raleigh.
Yeah. I just don't think it's a big enough role for Harry Ford to make him fantasy relevant in these final weeks. We'll see if I'm wrong about that.
Probably wrong. Probably right, I'm saying. Yeah.
Probably just an extra guy.
Justin Henry Malloy is similar. Is with that team right now, he might still have some interest, but the way they've been using him, it seems like they just think of him as a platoon guy and short side platoon. And that's, I don't know if maybe he ends up in a trade to another organization that wants to give him a full shot, like the Marlins or something. You know what I mean? That seems like, a natural fit without looking at the Marlins depth chart right now. I just think they're still in the gather resources part of their rebuild. So, yeah, otherwise, Ha-Seong Kim coming up for the Dodgers is a veteran at this point, I guess. I don't know that. Do you think he plays his way into some time here? I mean,
more of a small side platoon type, I think.
Edmonds gone though, so there's some time maybe in center, or maybe he's the second baseman now for the short term.
I just think he's more of a bench guy than we'd like him to be. That's the way I've looked at Ha-Seong Kim so far this year.
And that's, to be fair, that's the contract they gave him.
Yeah. And they're using him in a way that's maxing his value. He's playing well in the limited chances that he's had. So that's kind of nice. Victor Scott is back up for St. Louis. Do you think he'll provide some stolen base goodness down the stretch?
Yeah, it's been a weird year for Scott because he's been good. And I do believe he's their best center fielder, and he's the future for them there. But he has also been flawed. It's like an 81 WRC plus. The power hasn't really come online. He's struck out a little bit more than you might expect given his minor league strikeout numbers. Maybe he's stuck in between, like hitting for power or just being a zero power contact hitter. But I actually think there's another level. I think there's one more level because he's 24, right? And he got his first taste of like regular time, and he showed that with the defense, he's a league average guy. So I feel like next year he'll go into the season without necessarily doubting that he has a role. He'll say, I've got a role. And then we'll see if he has another level to him, which is, I've got a role. I don't have to worry about losing my role. Now I can try to be the best player I can be. And, I think those are kind of almost like, it sounds weird to say it that way, but is it kind of like almost competing? Like there's ideas like, I need to make this team.
Yeah.
I need to do whatever it takes to make the team. That's not always in line with be the very best player I can be.
Well, and he was gone because of an ankle injury. It wasn't like they flat out demoted him too, right? So this was an IL activation. Defense has been phenomenal. I think it's 11 defensive runs saved in center field, 15 outs above average. He's your center fielder. Like you want to give that more window to see if the bat can click a little bit. And yeah, it's a higher strikeout rate than you'd like, but you can live with it. 24.6% K rate, 9.2% walk rate. I think it's just saying, okay, if that's who I am, I got to do a little more damage. I got to punish mistakes more effectively to bump up value that way, or I have to lower the K rate. It's one of the two. Those are the things that will make or break them longer term.
It's two ways to another level. So it's not, I don't necessarily say, look at this and say, oh, that's maxed out. This is not like a 27, 28-year-old who finally made it and then did this,
Yeah. Former prospect George Valera up for Cleveland. They let Carlos Santana go recently, so if Manzardo is going to be the regular first baseman, that leaves DH open, so maybe Valera gets some opportunities. We'll have to keep an eye on that situation. Luis Garcia was back for Houston. How about that? That's a nice story, right? To get Luis Garcia back from injury and pitched pretty well that first time out, too. I think it was a quality start, even though it's like 6 Ks, 6 innings. Like, what else do you want your first start back? Maybe the velo to be a little higher. I guess that's still lagging a little bit compared to where it was pre-injury for Luis Garcia.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little touch and go with him. He's had good and bad stretches in his career too. But he mostly, did what he had to do. He had gave up 3 earned runs early on, but then stuck around to make it a more palatable line in the end. But he used all his pitches. He even used his curveball more than he usually did. So I'll count that as a win.
As promised, an abridged version of where the money went. This is a long view question. It's actually a question Steven Nesbitt sent me over the weekend. I feel like it's a good question to put out there for everybody. If you're in a long-term league and you're trying to choose between Payton, Tolle, and Jonah Tong, you got one spot. You can pick one of them up, or you can trade for one, or whatever. You're looking at them beyond this season. Who do you actually like better? We got to look at both of them on Friday night. Very different pitchers. And Tong, I think for anybody who was skeptical of the Lincecum comparisons, I think he delivered on that pretty well. The funny thing was when they were showing the Lincecum clips during that start, Lincecum looked more smooth to me than I remembered. I think there's a little more head whack, a little more violence in Jonah Tong's delivery right now that maybe over time that will smooth out. But that gave me some pause, seeing it and seeing big league hitters not as fooled by his stuff. I think relative to the ridiculous numbers he was putting up in the minor leagues, I don't know if it's going to be plug and play, smooth sailing for Jonah Tong from a strikeouts perspective right away.
Yeah, I also thought that Tolle's arsenal looked a little bit more full across the board. I know that, it was basically fastball, cutter, change, but he did throw, a sinker, a couple sliders, a curveball. So he did throw some other pitches. But even being 3 strong, I thought Jonah Tong's Arsenal was a little bit more two-pitch. It was a little bit the fastball that changed. The curve, it was there, and I just don't know. I don't know yet if he has good enough command of it. There was times where I thought the batters were just spitting on it. And it looks pretty different, I think, than his fastball. So, because it has a little bit more side to side wiggle, whereas everything else is very vertical for Jonah Tong. Then there was the head whack. And I just, he did struggle to get some whiffs. Like he didn't have a strikeout until I think the third inning or something. So while in the short term, I might prefer Tong's home park, and we were discussing this on the group chat, Tolle is going to be playing in Boston for a lot of his matchups. So even if you like the teams that Tolle will battle better than the teams that Tong will battle, Tong will be having those battles in Citi Field, and I just feel like that's such a nice, better landing spot. So the way I landed was, in this waiver period, Cabrera was number 1. For me, Tong was 2, Tolle was 3. And then I just want to throw this in there. Luis Morales was 4, and I ended up getting Luis Morales because I didn't have the money for those other guys. And I'm happy about Luis Morales. I think Luis Morales might be the real deal. Anyway, to answer this question, I take Tolle long-term, larger arsenal, not as crazy of a delivery. I know the location plus wasn't great in Tolle's first start, but I think that was due to nerves, and he had great walk rates in the minors. So due to, I'm going to say command, smoother delivery, great velo, large arsenal, it's Tolle for me over Tong.
I did not realize that Payton Tolle was a two-way player in college. It was brought to my attention in the Discord, which, he's 6'7". Like, yeah, it makes sense. If he could swing the bat, he'd have some power. Too. Yeah. But I think your breakdown is one that I'm on board with. I do think there's a slight edge to Tolle long-term, and I just think physically, I worry about, like, I'm sure people said the same thing about Lincecum when he was younger. I look at that delivery for Jonah Tong and think, oof, that is a lot of stress on a relatively small frame. And it's worked for him so far, and I hope it works for him for a long time. But compared to what Tolle does in his delivery, that also kind of weighs on my mind.
Yeah, there's the Lincecum concerns, and he could burn bright for the next 6 years and not have a super long career, and you'd still be happy to have him in your fantasy league, right? Like even if he didn't have long term, we're at the very beginning of that long term. So I would be careful not to be too worried about his long term ramifications in the short term. But the question was about long term leagues, and we're cutting the garlic fine.
If you're thinking mostly just for like a year or two, I could also see that being enough to push you back to the Tong side because it's close. But I think if you're playing the long game, Payton Tolle to me seems like he's more likely to have the better outcome of the two. But hopefully it's a great outcome for both. It was fun watching those debuts on Friday night. Any other interesting pickups that you had before we go?
I just, I got a bunch of Luis Matos after I said mean things about him. I'm very persuasive. It was mostly like he's going to. It was just like he's going to Colorado, and he's playing. And
okay, I'm not persuasive. You're just convinced by the funhouse.
Yeah, the funhouse is a crazy place. So, I did notice K-Wing Tang, pitched well there, and I've got my eye on him because everything moves. And I think if he could get command of some of the secondaries, he could be a pitched backwards guy. But right now, no model really likes him, which means he's load him.
Love it. Love it. Well, on the Wednesday show, we're also going to dig into some why should you be watching some of these teams if they're not in playoff contention names, because it's like a September viewing guide, right? Like what guides you aside from how the postseason races might shake out? Like what else matters when you're trying to choose which games to watch on any given day? We need to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can find Eno on Blue Sky, enoceris.bsky.social. I am dvr.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.